All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the BMA. My name is Carrie. I am the Manager of Public Programs and Partnerships here at the Birmingham Museum of Art. And tonight we gather to explore art and artificial intelligence, a culmination of tradition and innovation to explore the intersection where technology meets creativity. Our panel discussion is expertly moderated by John Fields, who is the Lydia Cheney and Jim Sokol Endowed Director and Chief Curator for the Abram Engel Institute for Visual Arts, and it invites a robust exploration into the transformative role of AI in the arts. For those venturing into this topic for the first time, AI art refers to the frontier where art meets the computational power of algorithms, and it opens a new chapter in creativity in pushing the boundaries beyond traditional methods. We're not just talking about digital canvases, we're delving into a world where AI assists and sometimes even leads the creative process. So we're honored to welcome also Colin Williams, who's the Professor of Art and New Media at the University of Montevallo. Don't hold the applause. So Colin's multidisciplinary work critically examines the narrative shaping our historical and personal worlds. Alongside him is the innovative Travis Rice. All right. Y'all are getting the hang of it. Travis is a multidisciplinary artist known for his Clayish AI collection and the pioneering Found on Mars NFT collection. So in a novel twist for tonight, we're actually going to also integrate ChatGPT, an AI-powered language model, into our panel discussion. So this participant will provide insights directly from the AI perspective, shedding light on the technological intricacies and artistic potentials of AI in the art world. The goal tonight is twofold. It's to enlighten ourselves with the knowledge and experiences shared by our distinguished panelists, and also to critically engage with the implications of this technology and what it harbors for the future of art. By the end of our discussion, we hope to not only have learned, but also to have sparked curiosity about the expansive horizons of AI art. So we encourage our audience to formulate questions as there would be an opportunity to engage with the panelists towards the end of the discussion. So let's embark on a journey together. Thank you all, and if we can give a warm round of applause to our panelists.
Let's also give a round of applause to Carrie Fountain. And to Henna as well.
Thank you.
I'm honored that my friends and colleagues at the Birmingham Museum of Art, who I deeply admire and respect, trust me enough to have a microphone on this stage, something that does not happen very often, but I love being up here. So I am going to just kind of contextualize the conversation just a little bit before we get started, and then I have a series of questions that I have prepared. We are going to stay in the lane of visual art for the majority of the conversation, if possible. But, we're just going to sort of see where the conversation takes us. But, it would be an understatement to say that artificial intelligence will significantly impact visual art over the next 10 years, influencing various aspects of creation, curation, and appreciation. And while artificial intelligence has generally been confined to the realms of science fiction, it has, of course, quickly become an undeniable reality in recent years. But, there have been many technological breakthroughs that have turned our culture upside down throughout history, influencing artistic techniques and materials, the way that art is created and experienced. We talked about a lot of these in our discussions leading up to this evening, the invention of the printing press, the development of photography, the Industrial Revolution, of course. One that I kind of don't think about too often, the invention of acrylic paint. The idea, the transition from oil painting to acrylic paint and what that allowed painters to be able to do and experiment led to a tremendous amount of innovation that is often kind of under-recognized. And then, of course, in more recent years, computer-aided design, digital art, the best and worst thing to ever happen to our culture, the internet, 3D printing, and of course now virtual reality, and now a generative adversarial, no wait, Yeah. Networks and other AI models can instantly generate novel and compelling visual content, expanding the possibilities of artistic expression once again. And artists are already using AI as a tool to enhance their creative process, something that applies to all three of us up here on the stage. AI algorithms can suggest ideas and styles, or even generate drafts or outlines, allowing artists to explore new possibilities and break creative barriers. And so before I start asking my questions, I do think we should take a moment to at least touch on how both of you individually as artists are utilizing AI in your work, just to kind of give a little bit more context to the audience, just in case there's anyone in the audience that hasn't really experienced a lot of, since it's such a recent development, what an AI-generated work of art looks like. And so I think we're going to start with you, Travis. So we're going to show this video up here. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this before we get into it?
Yeah, so this is my short film. It's an AI-generated short film. It's made up of over 50 short AI-generated clips. All of these clips were generated with just text. I didn't use any images or anything like that. It was just my thoughts that I verbalized through text and put it through a program. And you know, I created tons and tons of clips, probably like over 100, to curate down to this 2.5 minutes that you're going to see now. And then I guess I'll talk about the inspiration and everything about it afterwards. Yeah.
Perfect. There we go.
And then I got involved with the golf group line and it kind of helped. Well, it's just too much to do. Grad. Said to myself, I can stand one golf for having a good mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell us a little bit about what we just saw, Travis.
Yeah, so that was 2.5 minutes of surrealism curated by yours truly, using AI. So just the initial question was about how we're using AI in our workflow as artists, and so many ways to create that. One of the things that most people would probably miss is the music. So I also produce, I'm a music producer, and I collaborated with an AI tool that found samples, and I was able to curate the type of samples that I was looking for within like time, you know, from like time periods, genre, a number of parameters, and I was able to get the AI to sift through a bunch of music all over the internet, and I was able to select a little bit quicker than I would going to like Seasick or something and digging through records. It was just another way to do that and let AI kind of lead that. And once I found samples that I like, I used that to score that film. And as far as visually, like I said, it was all text. I didn't use any video, any images or anything to generate that. That was literally all text. Each one of those images, each one of those short clips were generated individually through my thoughts from style, like with the vintage VHS kind of film vibes. You'll see like film dust and things like that. All those were words that I gave it and prompted to get that aesthetic. And the thing I'm most satisfied with that is I was able to consistently create the same type of style visually for that long, which is not easy to do. A lot of people, hear AI is creating these things, and we've had discussions about that as an artist, and I'm on the side of the fence that it's just another tool. And if people knew my process and was to watch me use that, I think more people would feel that way, because yes, it created the outputs, but I had to give it so much input to create this output, and there's so much tinkering and design of the prompts that are going into these AIs, where certain words are placed that give it more weight in the output. The way you're using a word, maybe using running over run, things like that, style of camera, style of so much. And so, like I said, me personally, it's just another tool. I've used a bunch of AI tools in my workflow over the last couple of years. This is some of the most I guess it's on the forefront of AI technology right now for like creative work. With the video, it's kind of the rage right now. It's like text to video. Text to 3D is also something I've been experimenting with. I haven't really publicly shown anything yet, but this is on the forefront of stuff. And so I'm just really happy with the way this turned out, and I was able to do it. And the time it took me to do, it still took a nice bit of time. We were talking about this is 3 a.m. This is 3 a.m. If you're an artist, like work that was created in the middle of the night and just one of those, you got overcome with inspiration. It was one of those, but it still cut down on how much time it would have taken me to create this any other way, whether it was 3D, like Blender or program, or any other way. So.
Well, in your work, more than any artist I've encountered thus far that's using AI to assist in the generation of their artwork, you are the shining example that I've met for that argument that it is just another artistic tool, because you're using it in a way to create in a fashion that you probably wouldn't be able to do without. But then the way you're assembling the images is very traditional. It is literally editing, filmmaking 101, linear, nonlinear video editing. And that's where a lot of the creative decision making is not the AI. Like, that's very much in your control. And anyway, talk a little bit, just briefly, about the voices that you hear.
Oh yeah, so there's sound clips playing over half of the video. It is the largest piece of the inspiration for the actual film. So I went down this 3 a.m. rabbit hole of this scientist from the 60s, Dr. John C. Lilly. He did a lot of early research with dolphins. I have an obsession with dolphins. I think dolphins are like super smart. They're like one of the most intelligent creatures on the planet outside of us. And so, long story short, NASA gave him a big grant in the 60s to attempt to communicate with dolphins effectively in hopes that they would be able to communicate with aliens or extraterrestrials down the road. So he got this big grant. They bought like 3 dolphins, and it got shut down just because of his methods of going to communication. I think NASA ultimately did not align with. But that, just going down that rabbit hole of that research and that work made me think of like, what if there were more extraterrestrial sea life? Like, what would that look like? So it's like the inspiration is kind of like almost like a documentary kind of indie film of a research lab somewhere doing research on extraterrestrial sea life and marine life. And this would, it kind of started off, I was going to do a PSA originally, and it kind of evolved into what it is now. And it's available on YouTube if anybody wants to watch it after this. It is the Center of Extraterrestrial Marine Life Research, CEMLR, 1989. Which is the year I was born. So that's where the visual aesthetic comes from, of the vintage feels. That was a part of the prompting. To just give it another level of like personal connection with myself as an artist, and that went into it.
And I think a lot of people don't understand that that's not decisions that the AI are making. Those are decisions that you're telling it to.
100%.
Yeah. All right, let's. So then these are some more works by Travis, and we may come back to that, but I want to get to Colin here before we. Here we go. So Colin, you're also playing around with AI a little bit in your studio practice. Talk to us a little bit about anything you want us to know about you as an artist and your work, but then also this AI series that you've done.
I haven't really gotten as far as in depth with it as Travis has. Is it off?
You have to almost kiss it, Colin.
Is that better? Okay, sorry. So I don't think I'm as far along, like in rolling it into my practice as Travis is. So I'm cautiously optimistic about what AI can do. In the past, what I have done that is just AI. It's just not the AI systems that people are familiar with. So I've done things where I've basically written scripts, and then that's just an algorithm, just like any other AI would use, but then written scripts and then had that script take drawings and recontextualize the drawings, right? So I've done a lot of work like that, but in terms of using the big AI, that's made a splash in the last couple of years, I've just been playing around with that, right? But so I make these comic drawings. It's just part of my practice. Like I think sometimes you want to make things that you're thinking a lot about, you're spending a lot of time on. But then sometimes I just want to make things that I'm not thinking about at all. I'm just doing it daily, just to, I don't know. I could talk a long time and get on a tangent about what that fulfills for me. But I got interested in DALL-E over the summer. And so I started feeding these drawings, these comic drawings that I make, into DALL-E, and then repeatedly doing that, right? So DALL-E spits something out based upon my drawing. I take that, feed it back in, and just did, like 10, just because 10 seemed like a good number, iterations of that, right? And so the thing that was really curious to me about that is, this is one example. This is the best example. There are other ones that odd things happen, but in this example, so my original drawing is up there, and then this is the order that I fed them back in. And when you get down to the bottom one, I think everyone recognizes that character, right? So that's Homer Simpson. So the thing that I find really curious about that is, so right now, AI is being trained on almost 100% human creativity, right? But eventually, the more successful AI is, the more images made by AI that are going to enter our culture. And so then as they continue to develop the data sets for AI, those images will get fed back into those data sets. And eventually we're going to reach the point where most of the images in the data sets are going to be AI-generated images. And so then AI is going to be feeding on itself. So I love AI in a lot of ways, but I have a lot of questions about AI in other ways. And so one of the things that AI does is, it uses a data set and it finds patterns within that set. And so I'm just curious about, and I don't have an answer for this, but I'm curious about what's going to happen once the majority of what AI is using as a data set is AI. It's AI generated. And what I think is going to happen is what's happened here, right? I think it's going to reveal certain things about how it is finding patterns in that data set. And I think it's going to average things is what's going to happen. So I don't have any absolute proof, and this is just one thing, but I just found it to be pretty curious. It sparked my curiosity.
Well, maybe we'll discover some clues along the way tonight, but let's take it back just a little bit and start where I think is kind of like the natural starting point, which is just how is the integration of AI going to impact traditional artistic practices?
I think in the same way that any other
and maybe what are some specific challenges that it might pose for visual artists today?
I personally don't think it's going to be too much different than any other advance in the creative realm, where there's new paint or photography or things like that, I think, there will be a learning curve for most, that'll have to be figured out. And, I think once more people get their hands on it, the limitations will get pushed and like the walls will get pushed back further of, what it's initially being used for. But yeah, I see it being I personally, we've discussed it, I personally see it being very similar to things that we've already experienced artistically in like the creative fields.
And before you answer, Colin, do you also think that this is the type of thing that visual artists are going to get left behind if they don't sort of participate?
I want to say yes, but I think that might be a little too dramatic. As like it's been these AI tools have been around for like a year or two now, and I've pretty much been playing around with them from the beginning. They were like available for public access, and that was my initial thoughts. Like if you're not using this, you're gonna get left behind. But like I think per usual, everything's gonna find a home and a space, and there will be appreciation for everything because it's art. We're talking about art and people's preferences of what people like and stuff. So I don't think it will be that dramatic. I know that is the thing to say right now, right? Like if you're not using it, you're gonna get left behind. But
well, and Colin, as someone that's been, from an artist standpoint, on the kind of like edge of new media for many, many years now, like I'd love to know what you think about that, as far as how it will impact traditional art forms.
So I've been at the University of Montevallo teaching for 23 years now. So we were one of the first new media programs in the state. And whenever you say new media, the implication in that is that there's old media, right? So at some point in time, we don't know exactly when this was, but one of our ancestors pulled a stick out of a fire, and they took that stick, right, and they drew it along a cave wall. And at that moment, this magic black line appeared, right? At that moment in time, that was new media. That was charcoal, yeah? In the intro to drawing classes that we still teach, the first thing the students use is charcoal. So we've been using charcoal for at least 36,000 years, probably much longer than that, right? So we know that the cave paintings, they've been carbon-14 dated to 36,000 years last go, right? But so at least that long, probably much longer than that. Every development that has happened since then, so eventually we get tired of just black. So, one of our ancestors decides to, get red iron oxide off of the cave floor, they put it in their mouth, they swirl it around with their spit, and then we find these handprints all around the world where they've spat on the cave wall, right? All pigment is a binder and a pigment. At that point in time, that was new media. And you can go through every single media. Eventually oil painting is new media. Eventually, the printmaking processes are new media. Eventually, digital processes are new media. And now AI represents the edge of what's happening on new media, right? So I think that we have a tendency to think of technology as it relates to art, right? This marriage of technology and art. I think we have a tendency to think of that as a modern discipline, as something that's happening only in our times. The reality is that as long as there have been artists figuring out emerging technology. We just don't tend to think of charcoal as technology, right? And so there's this continuum. So what I would say is there are still people today using charcoal, and there are still people that charcoal is fundamental to their practice. AI is not going to be any different than any of these other new medias have been, in my estimation. There are going to be people that are going to embrace it. It is going to fulfill their creative and intellectual inquiry, right? But there are still going to be people that oil paint suspended, like pigment suspended in linseed oil, right? That's oil paint. That's still going to be the thing that for whatever reason resonates with them. So I don't see AI as the threat that a lot of people, like there's this existential threat that people are talking about. And it goes beyond just, undermining artistic practice. Like I realize it's broader than that. It's more culturally broad than that. But I personally think that that's an estimation, right? That's a fear-based response. And I think that we will continue to develop technologies and artists will continue to use them. And it's just going to open up and broaden the number of medias available.
Well, actually, based on your answer, I'm going to skip to a question I thought about asking a little bit later, and that's, we were talking about this in some of our discussions earlier too, and even just a few minutes ago, we were talking about getting older and feeling, understanding what 18 and 20 and 21-year-olds are saying and the language they're using and stuff. And I was shocked recently to learn how much a lot of the art students at the University of Alabama at Birmingham still sort of like silo themselves. Like painting, there's still this hierarchy. And the art world loves to kind of like create hierarchies, especially like with artistic mediums. We like to silo mediums. A painting is often viewed as somehow more valuable than a photograph. And I'm curious like how AI will kind of like affect our desire to assign value to artwork. And so I'll tell a little story that we talked about a little bit, but we have a juried exhibition that we do every year, and I'm not going to name any names whatsoever, but this was the first year in the 48 years of this exhibition where we had a student submit an AI-assisted artwork. And it was kind of a scandal amongst the students only. The faculty were kind of like, yeah, we should probably think about how to address this moving forward, but it was scandalous, and there were a lot of students that felt like the student was cheating. And that to me was shocking. Like, and that's not the reaction I would have expected. So I'm curious, like, what's your thoughts about that? Like, how's it going to change the way we sort of divide and silo artistic mediums, but also what's that going to do for how we assign value to work? And is it cheating? I mean, I know your answer actually, but I'm just
It's definitely
It's
cheating.
100% cheating. You're cheating. You're not a real artist if you use AI at all. I think the dust will settle. I think it's also new right now, so everybody's upping, aligning where they are, where they stand with this, especially creatives. I have a lot of these conversations with my, artist friends who are hesitant for different reasons or whatever. Once again, it's a tool, I think, and it has place with whatever the medium is. I think it has a place in your utility belt, so to speak, as an artist. We talked about, like, even you're feeding your hand-drawn art back into it and then feeding it, like, that's a way. I think we discussed in one of our calls, maybe you were saying you were doing the composition and things, using AI for composition to then go and paint. I think people are always going to find reasons to have issues with other things, artists and these, in the art world, this is more valuable for X, Y, and Z or whatever. And I think right now we're just in the thick of it because it's so new. But I think when it all settles, it'll find a similar home like anything else. I just don't think it'll be as controversial, maybe like 3 to 5 years from now. At least that's what I'm hoping. Maybe I'm just being overly optimistic. I don't know, but.
That's pretty fast in the grand scheme of timelines, just thinking about how long it took photography to be accepted as a legitimate fine art. It's advancing very rapidly. Colin?
I think in some way that question misunderstands the fundamental nature of what art is. So that's putting the definition of art on the shoulders of any given medium. Do you know what I mean? And that's not what art is, right? So art, it doesn't matter. Like I always tell students this, because we construct our curriculum according to this very traditional way of assigning, different concentrations, right? And so then what that does to the student, like the reason we do that is because we have to organize it some way. But what it does to some students is it gets them so focused on, I'm a clay artist or I'm a painter or I'm a drawer, that then they can't see the possibilities of some other tool. And all of these things are just tools, right? So I think the real question isn't whether AI is art, right? The real question is this thing that I've made using this tool meaningful in some way? Does it connect my humanity to your humanity, right? If it's doing that, it's always going to be art. It doesn't matter, because there's going to be something beyond AI, right? There's going to be the next whatever it happens to be. And so that next thing, like when something is on the cutting edge, it's still figuring out the trivialities of it, right? It's still figuring out its cliches. And AI right now is in that space. I would argue that computer art generally is still kind of in that space, right? Where it's still figuring out its cliches. It's still figuring out the trivialities, right? But when AI is well handled, when that tool is in the hands of someone that's, truly expert at connecting their experience to your experience, right? And that's what artists do. Like, very frequently people think that artists are artists because we have some kind of like a dexterity. What do people say? Oh, I can't draw a straight line. So they think drawing's about dexterity. Drawing's not about dexterity. If you can blow your nose, you have the dexterity to draw. What drawing is about, right, and what all the arts are about is deeply seeing the world, right? The reason why people can't draw or the reason why they can't make art is because they don't want to take the time to deeply connect and offer up that type of human vulnerability, right, that the art that I think is the best art personally does, right? It connects me intellectually, it connects me viscerally, it connects me emotionally, right? I have those responses that the work acts as a bridge, right, between me and that other person. Art is always going to do that, and AI is not going to undermine that, right? Now, is AI going to make trivial things? Yes, there's tons of trivial things being made with AI right now, but there are also deeply meaningful things already being made by AI. So I'm thinking about Matthew Ritchie. Like the artist Matthew Ritchie, I'm not familiar with a ton of people using AI right now because it's so fresh, but I think that Matthew Ritchie is making deeply meaningful things using AI. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, of course. No, you said exactly what I was hoping for. You made a comment when we were leading up that prompted me to write that question specifically for you, which is, what is art? Art is what artists do. So
I think it's really just that simple. Do you know, like we want to make it more complex. We don't try to make it more complex with carpenters, right? If a carpenter makes a chair and it's just a crappy chair, we don't argue that it's not carpentry, right? We say it's bad. It's not meaningful to me. I'm not comfortable in it. I fell on the floor sitting in it, right? It doesn't fulfill the need that I have for it. But with art, for whatever reason, right, we think we have to assign it artness. It's just that simple, folks. If you're an artist and you made it, it's art. Let's move on to the next question, right? The next question is it meaningful, right? Does it affect me? Because that's where the art really is. It's not in the object. The object's just a trigger.
Do you have anything you want? Yeah.
Cosign.
All right, then we'll kind of switch gears just a little bit, and we may swing back to some of the things we've talked about. But let's talk a little bit about the ethical considerations of AI. How can we ensure ethical use of AI in visual art, addressing issues such as inherent bias in algorithms, transparency, and responsible AI development? We were talking earlier about the fact that AI is racist, and is AI actually strengthening systemic forms of oppression and racism in our culture? And if so, what do we do to prevent that? Is there any way to prevent it? Whichever one of you wants to go first.
I don't know what the solution is 100%. I do think there may be answers. I'm going to lose some of you guys because my other part of my life is going to trickle in now. I think there might be answers on the blockchain, which is another emerging technology.
Elaborate and explain that a little bit to the audience.
Transparency, mostly transparency. A lot of that transparency for everyone. People can see things. Deep fakes are getting really popular right now because of AI. There's been a couple of, I know there was like a Mr. Beast hack or a scam that went around because somebody made a really convincing deepfake video of Mr. Beast, who's a big YouTuber, doing a giveaway of some sort, and they were able to get a bunch of money from people. But I was reading something Web3 related, or talking about how in the future things like that will be on the blockchain, so you'll be able to easily verify if this is real or fake where this originally came from because of the nature of the blockchain. As a ledger, it's basically just a ledger. It keeps record of things, and anyone can track it because it's public. That's the very condensed version of what it's doing. Chris, how did I do with that? Okay, cool. So yeah, I think there might be some solutions in the blockchain. I don't even have the time to get into that, but I think there may, just down the road, I could see that those two technologies kind of intersecting in a way that kind of helps with some of those issues that we're having with just ethical issues with
How do we prevent passing on our culture's bias?
get more diverse minds involved with the technology and building of the technology. You can't have, one demographic creating all this technology and expect it to represent a larger demographic, So that's one. I'm always, just big on getting more minds in the room, more diverse minds in that, the room on the ground floor. So, yeah.
I'm going to follow up to that once Colin's had a chance to talk.
So, I'm cautiously optimistic about AI. So I said that. This is my practice. I've been involved for a really long time with social justice and thinking about social justice in my art practice, and so this is the thing that concerns me the most, right? So I think that sometimes we're distracted by something. Yeah, so we're distracted by the existential crisis of AI. AI is gonna, become, come to this moment of singularity, and then once it crosses that moment of singularity, then it's gonna take over the world, right? And then we're all gonna be dead because it's gonna eat us somehow, right? So there's this existential crisis that a lot of the conversation is focused on. And so that is what if? That's a what if question, and I don't think that that's uninteresting, right? But very frequently, what if questions are used to distract from right now, right? And so the what if question, while I don't think that that's uninteresting, I think it is eating up a lot of the oxygen in the room, right? And what we really need to be focused on is what we know to be a fact, right? And what we know to be a fact is that AI was trained on all of this data set that was used. The argument is that it did not violate copyright because of fair use. Now, I'm not a copyright lawyer, but under my understanding of fair use, it clearly violates copyright. So the fact that it has begun this way, I think, is not good. The other thing that I would say is, so Elon Musk, right? We all know this wonderful man. Elon Musk has come out basically criticizing ChatGPT because he says that he thinks it has a liberal bias. And so he's got the money to do it and the resources to do it. So he's in the process of developing something that he's tentatively named Truth GPT, right? And it's going to be it's going to have a right-wing bias purposefully. He's already said that's what he intends to do because he's using the bias that he sees in the current AI as an excuse to make this other AI. So my fear is that what happens with AI is it fragments, right? And it becomes polarized. And it's not one AI tool that's being used democratically. It's all of these AI tools that are being used in this very fragmentary way. Why would I be fearful of that? Well, look at the internet. What has happened with the internet? So when the internet was first developed, we thought it was going to be this tool for democracy, right? That was going to give people universal education. And not that it hasn't done those things, but what it's primarily done is it's fragmented us as a society. And it's let people find like-minded people and then kind of, saute themselves and stew in their own, ideology, right? Yeah, and so I'm afraid that if we're not careful, AI is going to follow this same path, right? But part of the problem is that we're letting the billionaires do this work. It's the problem with people having that kind of influence, right?
So that actually goes perfectly into my next question, which is how do we make sure that AI is accessible to diverse audiences, and what are the challenges besides obviously we have a serious class issue in our country right now. How do we address this and ensure inclusivity, and who will control AI in the future? Is it always going to be in the hands of Elon Musk and Bezos and
Yeah, once again, I'd say decentralize it all. I'm very big on decentralization for those kind of reasons. Owned by the users, controlled by the users, transparently, permissionless. So these things can be monitored and improved by hands of the users, and not just a very small group of a centralized group of people who are billionaires or whatever who can do this, because you're a very small percentage of the people who are using this technology. So why not? And I feel like that about the internet. I feel like that about a number of things. I feel like decentralization is the answer. It seems like the more radical answer these days for some reason most of the time when I get to talking that way. But I think that is a way better solution than where we're headed and where we are now personally.
There's this idea of copyleft. So we're familiar with the idea of copyright, and copyright is connected to commerce. That's connected to being able to sell that thing as a product. But there's this other movement that we don't hear so much about, but it does exist, that's called copyleft. And it's a movement that advocates for copyright to be left open, right? For everything to be open source. And so what that does is it allows us to all bring our creativity to addressing the problem. It doesn't prioritize one group over another group, or at least to a lesser degree. So it opens up the process to a more democratic process, ideally. Now, in practice, does it do that? Absolutely, it doesn't. But more so than just a few really, really privileged and wealthy people dominating the conversation because they dominate the technology.
I got a question.
Your answer.
Yeah,
More
I was about to say
involved.
CCO that falls under copyleft. I would,
Yes.
based off, I've never heard that term, but I'm like CCO, which is also a really big movement in the decentralization Web3 movement. Like
It falls
CCO
under copyleft. So copyleft instead of copyright.
Cool.
I'm also upset with myself that I've never heard that word before, copyleft.
I just made it up.
Well, so let's talk about copyright a little bit. How I think there was already one lawsuit of an illustrator that tried to claim copyright over an image that was generated by AI through a prompt that he fed into the software, and he lost, right? Like, didn't a judge ruled that he couldn't copyright that? So who owns AI-generated artwork, or is this the thing that does finally revolutionize the way we think about ownership in terms of the art world? Is this finally the thing that can't be owned? Mickey Mouse is finally going into the public domain for the first time in a century? Yeah. Are we finally? Is there hope now that we might actually get some traction in that, where we kind of punch the art market a little bit?
I think we're there, or really close to it. Hopefully. Like I said, CCO is something I've really been into over the last couple of years, just through my time in decentralized communities, because it empowers people to make things bigger than the original creator, which is a lot of the reason why people go with CCO over a lot of things. Like a lot of NFT projects, artwork, is CCO now too, because they're decentralized in nature. It makes the brand bigger. It gives more exposure. If anyone who owns one of these, or really anyone, can use it a lot of times with CCO to further proliferate whatever the community is, or the art, or the brand.
Like, do you feel like you own your video that we just watched?
No, I just feel like I made it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when I think about meaning, I talk to students about this a lot. So when I think about meaning, I think about this space that is a cultural space that's completely in slippage at all times. And that space exists between the audience, so it's a triangle. Always draw it as a triangle. So the audience, the artwork, and then the larger culture. And meaning happens in that space. And if you change any of those variables, you change what the thing means, right? And so in that equation, a lot of students will say, well, where's the artist? Because I said audience, artwork, and culture, right? And so then my answer to that is, now, some people will draw this as square, and they'll put the artist in the other corner. But I put it on a triangle because I believe that the artist is only the most privileged member of the audience, right? And so if the artist is only the most privileged member of the audience, then it's easier to go copy left instead of copyright, right? It's because you're already releasing some ownership of it in the way that you're thinking about it, yeah? So that case that John was talking about, this was a year ago. So the United States copyright courts had this case where a writer wrote a children's book. And usually he would hire an illustrator, but he was like, well, I'm going to use Midjourney, right? And he used Midjourney to make all the illustrations, and then he copyrighted the book. Well, that went through the court system, and it got to the copyright court, and they basically ruled that he could have a copyright on the language because he wrote the language. He didn't use AI for the language, but that he could not copyright the imagery. And so where that leaves it right now is, like anything that an artist is making with AI has no copyright protection now, right? So your video has no copyright protection. So I think that it's always the case that technology is ahead of the legal system that supports and makes sense of it. And right now, that's where we're at, right? The legal system is trying to figure it out. Having said that, artists don't pay attention to copyright, right? Artists do what artists do, and and then Jeff Koons has been sued multiple times for copyright. Like in '96, the dog piece, I forget the name of that piece, but no, it's the puppy dogs. It's the couple, they're holding a bunch of puppy dogs. It might be called Puppies.
Yeah.
Is it called Puppies?
Well,
yeah, it's based off the photograph with
Yeah.
the puppies. So this is in '96. So Jeff Koons gets sued for that, right? Well, so that goes all the way to the Supreme Court. There are basically two main reasons that an artwork can claim fair use. One is as a parody. So that's how Saturday Night Live gets away with parody, because as a culture, we have decided that parody has a purpose, right? It transforms the original in a way that's useful to us, right? So the second reason is as a transformative work. Now that's a little bit more hazy. As a parody has always been protected by copyright. As a transformative work has gone back and forth. And so with that Koons piece, it was ruled that that was not a transformative work and it was not a parody. So then Koons had to pay the original photographer for use for that piece. Well, then what did Koons do? Well, Koons is super famous. So he turned around, he made 10 of them, and he sold each of them for $5 million. So he paid the man $250,000 for the rights to the image, and he turned around and he still figured out a way to, make money off of it. But
Richard Prince does the same thing. The gallery has figured out that it's just cheaper for him to settle every lawsuit right away and anticipate that he's going to get sued immediately, and they just settle it, and everyone still gets rich.
The latest example of this just happened this fall. So there's a Warhol painting, and it's one of the celebrity paintings, right? So y'all.
This was my next question, Colin.
Okay, sorry, I'll wait.
But go right on ahead.
So it's of Prince, and he did this late in his life. So Warhol died in '87, and so this is a piece that was made in the mid '80s. It's one of his later pieces, but it looks like those celebrity pieces that we're all familiar with. But it's of Prince. Well, the photograph that he used, he didn't own the rights to. Now, I don't fully understand why they waited to sue now, but basically they sued the Andy Warhol Foundation, right, for the use. Do you know why?
It was Vanity Fair. So the photographer had originally licensed use of the image for Warhol through Vanity Fair, and Vanity Fair broke the agreement, and they sued, and the Warhol Foundation countersued.
Okay. But this went all the way to the Supreme Court. And so again, the two reasons why this is allowed, at least from a legal standpoint, from an artistic standpoint, do whatever you want is what I say. But from a legal standpoint, the two reasons why it's allowed is either as a parody or as a transformative work. To me, it's clearly a transformative work, but the Supreme Court disagreed. So the Supreme Court has flipped on this again. right? Now that probably has something to do with the current makeup of the Supreme Court. But they've flipped on this, and so that leaves someone even as famous as, Warhol, like open to.
It was a pretty foolish decision on the foundation's part to not just pay the settlement, and
At the beginning.
now we have the Supreme Court ruling that will definitely ripple for the next many, many years in terms of artistic appropriation.
There was a situation with for Obama's first election with Shepard Fairey's
Yep,
the
absolutely.
Hope piece,
Yep.
and there was a similar situation with that. I don't remember what the outcome of that was.
That was with the AP, and basically before that went to the Supreme Court, AP, Shepard Fairey settled with the AP, gave them, a settlement, I don't know what it was, and basically bought the rights to the image.
So from what you're saying, it sounds like it doesn't matter what Travis thinks about whether he owns the piece or not. He doesn't, because there's no copyright.
Well, and then why does it matter, right? Because like Travis, you're just privileged, right? In my estimation, and I could be wrong, but in my estimation, you're the first audience member, and you're the most privileged audience member because you have all the backstory and all the emotional connections, and you know exactly how it was made, right? The next circle to that privilege are your friends, right? Your studio mates or friends, and your family. And then, the next circle is, people that follow you as an artist. And then there's a circle out from that are people that are just, coming to your work for the first time. Yeah. But if you look at it that way, right, it doesn't matter if you have copyright or not, at least not from an artistic point of view, maybe from a monetary point of view.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And once again, back to the blockchain, on the monetary, side, ownership, in any extent, for that, whatever the blockchain would provide.
Yeah. Well, so as we're kind of navigating that thin line between appropriation and innovation and plagiarism, is there anything we should be thinking about in terms of guidelines and things that should be considered as far as plagiarism goes with AI to prevent? And I guess I have kind of one last question too that goes back to a little bit about that student that submitted work. Should artists sort of be expected to disclose that they're using AI to assist them in the creation of their artwork? Do we care about that?
I don't think they have to, if I'm being honest. I don't.
Because I'm of two minds, but I want y'all to.
Yeah, I don't think they have to. I get why people would want to, but like, I don't know. You don't hound a magician for his tricks. How he did it, how he pulled the rabbit out of the hat. You just go, that's really cool. I like that you can pull a rabbit out of your hat. I wish I could pull a rabbit out of my hat. So I get why people would want to, but like I'm also pro having a little magic in the world.
Well, I'm also very aware that you're both in different positions. One as a visual artist making work, you're also a visual artist, but you also have to work within your responsibilities as a university educator, Colin. So I'm curious what your opinion is of that.
I haven't gotten, well, that I'm aware of. I haven't had anything turned in by a student that's been generated by AI.
Exactly.
That I'm aware
That you
of.
know of.
There you go.
Do you know, I don't know. I guess I'm a Deschampian. As antiquated as that might seem, right? So,
As relevant as ever.
Yeah. So, the magic trick of Deschamps is that he showed us that what was important, all of that technical skill to be able to make something, that's all important. If you're getting something from it as an artist, right? I'm very much, in graduate school, I had a professor that said that I have a modernist heart and a postmodern mind, right? And she didn't mean it as a compliment, but I completely took that as a compliment. But what Deschamps did for us, right? This is the beauty of Deschamps in my mind, is if we still want to have that responsibility and that love affair with oil paint or whatever we're in love with in terms of media and process, we can still do that, right? And that can still be central to our art practice. But that's not the art making. I mean, it is the making, but it's not the art, do you know? So with Deschamps said, what matters is I said it matters, right? I focused my attention on this thing. So because I focused my attention on it, that's why it matters. And so I think that with AI, it shouldn't matter. Now I'm caught in the position that you're caught in, like as an instructor. So I don't know that I have, I don't know that I don't know that I've worked this out yet. We're definitely going to have to figure something out though.
And that was the general, consensus, was that like there's nothing we probably shouldn't care about it right this second, but it's definitely a conversation that we need to have and figure out how to respond next time.
As an artist, like I'm like, more power to you, right? Like, but have you used it in a way that's effective, right? Back to this thing about, I really believe that art is what artists do. And so the artifact, it almost doesn't matter how we got there in terms of tools, right? It absolutely matters how we got there in terms of emotion and intellect, right? That's what matters. And I think that's always going to matter. And you're going to have AI that's going to be horrible, but you're also going to have charcoal drawings that are horrible, that aren't meaningful to me in any way. The tougher part of that, though, is the legal part, right? So just, what to do in the classroom.
For sure.
I don't have an answer yet.
Yeah. I asked the same question to my artist friend, Amanda Rossho, and she answered before he had even finished asking the question. And her stance is that it is absolutely the artist's prerogative to deceive the viewer.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And she's not wrong. So that's kind of the end of my pre-written questions, Carrie. Should we open it up and let some people in the audience ask questions? I'm sure there are plenty of people here in the room that can contribute something to this conversation. We've already got our hand up. He's going to bring you a microphone, sir.
Becomes autonomous, who owns it? Where's the attribution?
Once it's sentient?
How do you come up with a value if you can't attribute? We have examples where there was Rembrandt or not Rembrandt, all the experts. How did they make a determination it was a Rembrandt? By technology, by pigment, by aging. But what are you going to do about this AI total creation?
I think it's an interesting question, but I think it's a question that has a couple of false assumptions. And so one false assumption that we make, okay, so these are false assumptions about getting to the point, so this comes from science fiction, this idea of singularity, right? So that's describing this point where AI is conscious, right? So getting to that point, not your questions. I don't think your question has false assumptions, but your question is based upon this idea of AI meeting this point of singularity, right? Coming to this point of singularity. I think that has a couple of false assumptions. So one false assumption is it buys into this analogy that we've all bought in to some degree, including myself at various times, that the human mind is a computer and it relates to a computer, right? That analogy is a completely false analogy. And the reason why, in my estimation, is that a computer is taking a data set and it's then trying to find patterns within that data set. But it doesn't experience the data set, right? What it means to be human is what it means to be biological, right? What it means to exist in the world. So I just really question, are we anywhere near the point where we're, have machines that are going to reach this point where they're conscious? I don't think we're anywhere near it. I think it's a fantasy that is being sold to us, right, to generate interest around this technology. I think it's marketing is what it is. So I really love Marshall McLuhan, the Canadian thinker about media, right? So he's got this really famous book that's called On Media, The Extensions of Man. And he wrote this in, I believe, 1965. So McLuhan, he saw the internet in the 60s. He saw AI in the 60s, right? So he was just amazingly prescient in his predictions about what was going to happen. But for McLuhan, you know, like his most famous dictate is the medium is the message, right? So probably most of you are familiar with that. But for him, the thing that I love about him is that he always kind of saw the upside of technology, but then also acknowledged the downside of it. So most people know his work talking about like all of technology as the extension of man, right? So a cup is the extension of a hand, right? This microphone is the extension of my voice. A car is the extension of my feet, right? AI is the extension of our brain. Like that's where part of this misconception comes from, is that kind of idea. But because it's not biology, right? It doesn't understand living in the world, right? And you have to understand living in the world to understand context, and if you can't understand context, you can't understand content, right? So I think it's a good question that you're asking, but I don't think it's a question that we're anywhere in the realm of having to answer. I don't think we're anywhere near it, personally. That doesn't answer your question.
A better brain than mine, namely Jeffrey Hinton, when asked this question, incidentally, 50 years ago, he was the one who was the godfather of AI.
Mm-hmm.
And he was asked several questions on 60 Minutes a couple of months ago. And he was asked, does AI have awareness? And he said yes. He says, is it conscious? He said, it will be.
I think it might be. I don't think it is. I mean, I don't know. I'm not, I teach at Montevallo and I teach, right? So, but in my estimation, okay. Let's just go back. Let's step back a little bit. So there is some stuff that kind of bothers me about the way that AI has been marketed to us, okay? So even the term AI, right? So all the AI is software. That's all it is. So, over the course of my entire career, it's been enough for companies to sell software as software. So now suddenly, though, we've changed the language. And I always get a little suspicious when we change language, right? That's a rhetorical device to get us to open up the conversation again. Yes? Yeah? So I think what the AI companies are doing is they're purposely changing the language. And they're trying to personify the language so that we focus on this idea, yeah? Which I just don't know. I don't know the ins and outs. I don't know your friend,
Tangential. When you create a neural network, you imitate the brain to act like the brain.
It's not an imitation of the brain, though. That's a fallacy, right? The brain does not just work electrically. Computers work through electricity. It's an electrical process.
Brains work through electricity.
Partially, but the brain also exists in the world in the way that computers do not exist in the world, right? And we aren't just parsing a data set that's been given to us. We are generating that data set through our experience of living in the world. And then on top of that, I think what that's forgetting is we're as much chemical as we are electrical. Do you know? And computers are not chemical at all. So maybe if we reinvent computer systems where we have a computer system that's electrical and chemical, then we can have an analogy that's not a fallacy. But until that happens, I think the analogy is a fallacy.
Okay, I say we have time for a couple more questions. Thank you very much for your questions, sir.
Hey, ask GBT.
I have a question for Travis.
Yes, sir.
On creating that piece, you said that it was from your thoughts and ideas and expressed through your words into the computer program, and I'm not experienced with these programs. So how long was is it a narrative, or like how do you lay the words out In other words, to make something of that length at that detail.
Have you done any AI prompting at all? Have you used ChatGPT?
No, I really haven't, and that's my bad because,
That's good. We're going to show you how it works
Are
here in
you?
just a
Okay.
second. Yeah.
Yeah, no big at all.
Yeah.
It's a prompt. They're all just prompts. Like I said, each clip you saw, every 2-3 second clip before it transitioned to another clip was an individual clip that I created, and I montaged them all together to get the length that you saw. But everything was done individually. So really, that's one piece made up of like 50 pieces.
Okay.
And they're just a prompt. I don't know how long in length, just a series of words and
And
phrases.
you can break it down like you were saying, film dust and stuff like that?
Yeah, I would give it subject. I'd give it even down to the camera position and camera motion,
Right.
the amount of motion in the scene, setting,
Okay.
and style. All of that, and I would put all of those things into one prompt
Okay.
to get one of those clips that you saw.
Got it. That seems like that's where the creativity is.
Yes,
if
sir.
you're going to copyright anything, it would be whatever
prompts.
you input.
Yeah, probably the prompts maybe. We didn't talk about that, but I was gonna. We were talking about copyright. Yeah, thank you. But like the prompts is, as far as within the copyright.
Yeah.
I don't share my prompts though. We didn't even talk about that. I don't share it.
With me?
I do not share my prompts. I would have to take you out right after I shared it.
Okay, so I have like a question or more of a food for thought statement about the relating to people in power with money being the head of the development of AI. I think one of the reasons for that is that they have the freedom, not only with their money, to have like physical access to those things, but everyday people are more worried about things because they don't have money. So how would we bring AI down to a level? Like, I know you guys might not have like an exact answer to that, but like, would there be a way to make it more accessible or to bring importance to that to everyday people?
I think some of it is just the public perception of AI. That it really is something that, if you have the right type of personality, like you can teach yourself how to do it and can kind of claim it.
I think one of the answers is to crowdsource it. Do you know, like the way that Wikipedia runs? Like Wikipedia is amazingly accurate, and anyone can go and edit. You could go on tonight and go edit something on Wikipedia and change it and make it a falsehood, but it'll get corrected so quickly because so many people are working on it. So I think if you could crowdsource it and take it out of the hands of megalomania, maniacs, right? Then I think that by definition, it's going to be more democratic.
Decentralization.
Yeah.
Another one in the tally.
On my way home today, there was literally an NPR story about Wikipedia and how much more accurate it has become than even the Encyclopedia Britannica.
We had a question back over there in that corner at the top. I was pointing out Chris because he actually might be someone who could speak on it.
So we'll do this woman who's got the mic now, and then we'll do Chris, and then we'll wrap up.
I just asked it. I'm trying to ask the questions in GBT as y'all talk too.
Oh, lit. Okay. There you go.
Okay, so I do agree with like artists' personal use and like experimentation, but kind of my question is like what this means for an artist's ability to make a living in kind of this capitalist system that we live in. Because kind of in a corporate setting where as before they would have to hire an artist to create an image for promotion or marketing or graphic design, now they can generate an image. Recently, the Birmingham Museum actually used AI-generated images for promotional material. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, as an institution that supports the arts, like, what kind of a precedent is that setting for artists making a living?
I'll say this. I've still been getting commissions and jobs now to use the AI. A lot of people are gonna start messing with these tools as they become more available and more popular and realize, like with any other program, it's like, I don't care to learn this. I can do this, but like it's still not what I want. And I think we're gonna still end up in a place where you're just looking for creatives again that are just using these tools. And at least that's been my experience so far. And it's, and if anything, as far as making a living, I've been able to produce more stuff than I've been able to, to use to make money or whatever, because of the time I'm saving as a creative, using these tools. So I know there's a lot of, I'm sure, businesses and organizations that are thinking, well, we're just going to do this right now. But I think they're all going to get to a point where I don't know what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can go learn Photoshop, but graphic design is practice and hours, like any creative field or whatever. So I think we're, right now it's new and it's fresh, so people are thinking that this is the solution. And most of them don't have any hands-on experience with that when they're thinking that until it's too late. And I think we'll just get back to the same point. That's just my personal belief and experience.
If you go back to the 90s when desktop publishing first hit, right, there was these same kind of worries about desktop publishing putting all of graphic designers out of business. And, it was kind of a two-edged sword. So one thing that it did is it did put typesetters out of business. So that whole industry cratered because of desktop publishing. So there is justification in that fear, I think. But, it also just opened up possibilities. It basically put it back on the designer to be typesetters, right? So the designers just had to take on that as part of the role of being a designer. So I think that, or maybe clip art's like a good example too, like the use of clip art. There's still gonna be people that are gonna, there are people that can use clip art in ways that are like really amazing, but it comes down to, you disagree?
I said prove it.
Prove it? Well, Neville Brody, the designer Neville Brody, he uses clip art and he uses it in amazing ways. But I do think that some people are going to lose their jobs, but I guess I'm confident that as many other jobs will open up because of it. I don't know. I don't have any way to prove that. But if you look historically, that's what's happened with emerging technology.
Yeah, my answer would be the same as Colin. I don't think we know yet what that's going to look like, but it is very similar to things that I, even in my lifetime, have witnessed. And I know, I don't think Carrie's probably not in a position to comment on why the BMA used AI software, but I know we've never used it at AVA, but doesn't mean we necessarily wouldn't. But we do have designers, and they would be the ones kind of tasked with that.
The designers use it though? Probably.
No, it was actually 100% it was me. So
there you go, blame Kerry.
Oh well, then you are in a position.
So
Kerry.
what had happened was so we make a schedule. It was for Art After 5, and the social media manager, I was showing her the schedule, and from talking with this panel, because usually I put together, like, it's a printout that people get in just little images, whether it be from Google or something to describe what the activity is. And I was like, oh, let me just try to put this in AI, see what it shoots out. And I was showing the social media person the pictures. She's like, these are so cool. Can you send them to me? And that's probably what happened. You probably saw it on social media.
So it was our
fault. She did
and
mention
Kerry's
that
fault.
someone said something. Okay. So yeah, so
I love it.
I'm sorry. We tried it and went with it, and still kind of figuring out, I think, like, what to do. But our designers, if I wanted to get something designed from the designers, I'd have to, they're so busy that it'd be months out, but it'd be hard for them to design thumbnail photos for The Grinch, Art After 5. And so I think that's kind of what this conversation brings up too, is there's a part of it that it's a tool. So, it's like, do you bring something into your workflow and then it give you results quickly? But is it ethically right? And that is something that I don't know, and I do apologize if it offended you.
I think also in terms of considering like being in the museum and we are like sort of caretakers of like other people's art, right? So it puts us in a different position, and like, that brings in the whole copyright issue even more because I know like Colin said that copyright, like it's not as important, but like in terms of museums, that copyright is very important to give credit to the correct, like the people who hold those copyrights. Sometimes, most of the cases, the copyright is not held by the artist or the artist's descendants. Sometimes it's like a completely different foundation that holds the
No, and ironically, Andy Warhol, I'm in the middle of curating a Warhol exhibition, which is why I had that as one of the questions. And someone that's so blatantly kind of like appropriated other people's images, you have to work with the Andy Warhol Foundation to get permission to, us as an institution, like the process that we have to go through just for the right to post an Andy Warhol on our Instagram page is outrageously complicated. And they charge you for every instance that you use that image, so it's a very kind of like ironic situation in my opinion. We got time for one more, Henna. I think he's been very patient.
No, this has been absolutely awesome. I guess I come from the other side of the aisle as a technologist, and when you think about some of the beginnings of AI that we started to hit on with Jeffrey Hinton, a lot of this came from math theory and then applied. Computer science wasn't even a field when this stuff was beginning to be thought about, and now we're here. And the idea of like AI for art is actually super niche, right? Most folks in AI, before the recent emergence, they would look at you like you were crazy if you weren't trying to classify an image. And so I would like to kind of maybe pose a different kind of question, right? So for those of you who kind of look through the lens of an artist, right? What challenges do artists have now that AI can't currently solve? And if you could have a magic wand and say, AI, do this, right? What would an artist, right, want AI to do? I'm kind of interested in that.
I'm ready for it to be inside a cyborg body that can actually physically make my work for me after I tell it what to do.
There we go.
That's already, not cyborg, but AI.
I'm ready.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's covering a lot of ground right now. Like Chris is my co-founder. We have a web development studio together, and he knows. Chris is a part of that privileged audience that right outside of me. He sees a lot of this stuff first, and he's in technology, so we have a lot of crazy conversations. But he knows. There's 3D now. That I've been tinkering around with recently. Video, image, sculpture, maybe like just physical. Large format sculptures or something would be cool to have an AI tool to do. But I guess 3D printing along with text to 3D now kind of makes that possible.
Yeah, I'm thinking about 3D a lot because this semester I taught 3D, and some of the 3D software now has AI prompts in it. You know what I mean? And that is going to be, because with 3D, what takes so much time is the modeling. Just getting to the point where you can animate something just takes so much time. And so I think that like those types of, just that seems like not very sexy, right? Because but from my point of view, like just in terms of saving time to get to the point where you can, take that model and then, begin to really do things with it. Like those just real kind of, ordinary tasks. I think those things are super exciting, actually. I mean, I don't want AI to take over from me from feeling and thinking, and I question whether it can, But the task-oriented things like Studio Assistant AI, oh man, I'm all for it.
That's what I'm talking about, dude.
Yeah, let the AI handle all tasks, small, trivial tasks. Put it off on the AI 100%.
Well, I think we've talked long enough. I love doing these panel discussions, and not because I like to hear myself talk, it's because I love getting the opportunity to meet and interact with brilliant artists such as yourself, Travis, and Colin. It has been my absolute honor to get to know you guys and to be here with you today, and thanks again to Carrie and Henna for always putting great programming together. Thank you all for being so patient and engaging with the conversation tonight. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you to ChatGPT, our fourth panelist.
Hey.